Hey there, my name is NervousCook. Today we're going to be checking out a brand new sample pack from the one and only Butcha. Now, I've been a big fan of his going all the way back to the Dangerous Fireworks series, and of course we've had the dark and gritty sound from the Filth series, but with this new sample pack, which is called Nourishment Volume 1, it feels like he's exploring a more diverse range of genres and styles, and what we want to do today is just take a quick look at what's included, and then at the end I'll cook up some kind of beat using some of the samples that we found. Now, for this particular demonstration I'm going to be using Koala Sampler, but bear in mind these are high quality WAV files, so you'll be able to use them with any DAW or any other piece of hardware. So let's open up the samples folder and see exactly what this kit looks like. You'll see we've got our main folder, Butcha Nourishment Volume 1, and if we open this up, you will see you've got 16-bit and 24-bit files. Now, it's great to have those included because if you're like me and you use older samplers, the older MPCs for example, you really need the 16-bit files unless you want to have to convert the 24-bit because those older samplers don't like to run with 24-bit files. Because we're using Koala Sampler today though, we can open up the 24-bit folder and take a look at the main structure. We've got some breaks, some effects, some music chops, some one-shots, and finally you've got this perk, hi-hat, loops, and effects folder. Now, the Butcha's always been known for generous sample packs. It's not just a few samples that he gives you, always gives you plenty to play around with, but it feels like Nourishment Volume 1 is a step further. You can see here 1,034 breaks. That is a crazy amount of drum breaks to be able to play around with. We're getting 31 effects, a whopping 521 music chops, and if you're familiar with the Butcha kits, you'll know that he always gives you plenty of these melodic loops that you can either just use straight up and loop them up, or you can have fun chopping those up, rearranging them, and creating something completely new. We also have a one-shots folder. If we take a look inside, this is where you'll find all the drum one-shots. So we've got our hats, kicks, percussive sounds, and snares, and then there are 191 of these percussive loops, these hi-hat loops, and presumably some effects loops thrown in there as well. Now, of course, we're not going to go through every single sample in this sample pack. It's far too large, but I do want to give you a bit of a taste of some of the samples that are included. So let's start with the breaks folder. Now, as we said, 1,034 breaks. For each of these drum breaks, these loops, there are usually variants, so they'll be recorded with a certain rhythm, a certain pattern, and then there will be variants of that particular loop. If we just take a quick sneak peek at some of these, so as you can hear from just that small taster, a very eclectic range of breaks. Let's take a quick look at some of the effect sounds. And of course, another classic feature of any Butcha pack is the music chops. And again, with Nourishment Volume 1, we're getting this more eclectic, diverse range of styles, genres. And again, with just a very small preview, you can see how much creative possibilities there are within this Music Chops folder alone. You could spend hours and hours in here chopping up those loops, rearranging them, just having a lot of fun with it. If we have a little preview of the one-shots folder, take a quick listen to some of the hi-hats. There's some really nice kicks in here. Then we've got some individual percussive sounds. And finally, a snares folder. And in this final folder, we have a bunch of percussive loops, hi-hat loops, and effects loops. Okay, now that we've had a look at some of the samples, let's see if we can use some of those to cook up some kind of a beat. Now we know we've got some really great breaks in here, but I think I'm going to use some one-shots and put together my own drum loop. So let's go into the one-shots folder. I'm going to start with some kick drums. And I like this AA Kickboxer 1 and Kickboxer 3, so we'll load those in. I like this 808 hi-hat. And I also like this Choo Choo Trizzy Snare 3 and number 4. So we'll load both of those. Now that we've got some drums loaded up, let's go to our sequence. I'm going to start at 80 BPM. We might tweak this as we go along, but let's open up a fresh sequence. I can then load in some of the drum samples. So let's start by putting the kicks in some pretty typical places for now. We'll do something very simple and then maybe expand on that later on. I'm going to put my snares in the typical places as well. And with the hi-hats, I'm just going to run those across the 1 bar loop. We're going to use velocity to add some variation in as well, give it a little bit of life. And we've done that for the hi-hats, but let's do it for the kick drums a little bit as well. I'm actually going to slow the tempo down a little bit, maybe to 76 BPM. I'm going to select all of these drum samples, and I'm going to turn the snapping off, and then we can just nudge these off the grid ever so slightly, make them a little bit lazy, kind of behind the grid. Now we can go back into the samples folder again, and I want to add a couple of little percussive elements. I like this tambourine noise, so I'm going to load that. I'm going to put those back inside the sequence in exactly the same pattern as the hi-hats, just straight across. We'll grab those and we'll put them off the grid as well. And again, I'm going to add some velocity variation just to give it a little bit of rhythm and a little bit of life. This sample's quite loud, so we're going to turn the tambourine down a little bit. Now that we've got a drum loop going, let's go back into samples and pick one of the music chops so that we can slice that up. I like this one, could have been in Filth 2. I think this is a really cool dark sample, it's kind of my taste. We'll load that one in, and inside of Koala we can go into Tools and we can go into Auto Chop and slice this thing up. Now because we know this is a perfect loop, I'm going to slice this up equally over 8 chops and just use that as a good starting point. We'll make sure we're in choke group 1 and turn this into one-shot mode. Now before we try and make these sample chops fit, I just want to extend the beat out a little bit because we've only got 1 bar, so we're going to go into our sequence and double this up to 2 bars, and let's see if we can work out a pattern that fits with our drums. Okay, that's a good enough starting point. Got this nice eerie kind of sample, sliced it up, just took a couple of little pieces out there that I like. Doesn't need to be overly complicated. And I'm going to jump back into the sequence and I'm actually going to double this up again now to 4 bars. Now the reason I'm doing that is so that we can create a switch up here. And what I'm going to do is I like this other little sample slice. And I'm going to try and fit that in to create like a switch up in the first 2 bars. I want to keep the first note from the first sample pad on A12 And I'm actually going to put this one in on A11 just over here and see if we can work out the timing of that so that it just creates something a little bit more interesting within those first two bars. I kind of like that. I think the timing's slightly off. We'll just move the sample slice, the start point around till it just fits a little bit more naturally. But I like the idea, I like the concept. That sounds much better now. We moved over this second sample a touch just so that the timing of it fits better with the drums. Now the next thing I want to do is add another sample in, and I want to try and find something that has some bass in it that we can use. We want to pinch a piece of bass to create a bass line for our track. Now still inside of the music chops folder, there's this one called Campo Bass, which I noticed it's almost like stems from a composition, and this one just has the bass sample. So let's load that up because it's got some bass in here. And we can see by the waveform, we've got all of these like individual pieces, these bass notes. I'm going to take this one. We don't know the tuning of it in terms of like the key or anything, but hopefully we can pitch that and make it work with what we've got. I'm going to crop it down, and I'm also going to make it mono. Going to normalize that. Now with this small bass sample that we've pinched from one of the other musical loops, we can put that into a chromatic mode. You can do that with your DAW inside of your sampler, and then we can play that like an instrument so we can try and find the right key that's going to fit with the other chops that we've got. Okay, there we got our bass line. It's quite a short little note because of course we pinched it from something longer. A little trick to get around the shorter note would be to stretch the note out. We could stretch it using like time stretch, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to send it using the mix bus to bus A, where I can apply a delay effect. If we open up one of these effects slots, I can choose a delay, and then I'm going to sync it to the BPM, choose something like 1/8 notes and pull the mix down a little bit. It's just going to give a little bit of delay to our bass line. If I just solo this bass sample, you'll be able to hear the delay. You can dial in the mix to get it right. Now to finish off, let's go back into samples. Just pick a couple of little effects samples to just kind of sweeten the deal. If we go into the effects folder, let's just pick out a couple of little samples, just something to add some detail to our little beat loop. I kind of like this one called Woman Grown. Gonna load that one up. And I kind of like this one, Messages Vibes 2. Let's start with this Woman Grown. Just gonna bring the volume down a touch. And I think we'll record that right at the beginning. And then we can take a look at the longer effects noise. I don't think I want all of it. I think I'm just going to trim it down to maybe just like a little piece at the end where it's kind of fading out. I'm also going to pitch it down. I think 5 semitones sounds good. And I want to take some of the high end out. I just want to reduce some of the highs. And with this, I want to record it as the bass line drops out. And for the final piece, I just want to add one more of these effects sounds just at the end where the bass line drops out again. I'm going to go with this Message Vibes 9, and I'm just going to do the same. I'm just going to trim this down so we just got a small piece of the tail at the end that's just kind of fading out. And And there we go, we've cooked up a beat using the samples from this new Beat Butcher kit, Nourishment Volume 1. I hope this has given you a little bit of a taste of what's included in the sample pack. It's incredibly diverse, there's so much that you can dive into here, there's hours and hours of sample chopping fun. And like I said at the beginning of the video, it's an incredibly generous sample pack with just over 2,000 sounds, which is crazy. Anyway, I'm going to sign off there. It's available from the Drum Broker. Go check it out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Take care, and I'll see you again.